Okay, so before I answer the question, thank God Colin is here because he can fill out the really concise theological answer. But basically, Jesus was also fully human, including with a fully human soul and intellect, and he was fully God. And that divine immortal nature was joined to his human nature. And so we could say, I suppose, that when Jesus died, it was his human nature that died, and not actually his divine nature.
Yeah, so I would build on that and say that this is nothing new. Like, there's nothing new under the sun, right? These questions, exactly like this one, was battled. All questions pertaining to Christ and who he was, and it's called Christology in the realm of theology. This was all battled out fiercely in the first 5 centuries of the church. And Nestorius, there's a popular heresy called Nestorianism, where he took offense at the title Theotokos for Mary, because he was offended that Mary was called the Mother of God. So that's kind of in the same vein as this question. How can we say that God died if God is immortal? So thankfully we have the church that came to a resolution on this, and they ultimately arrived at the doctrine of the hypostatic union, which is the technical fancy term for everything that Father Peter just said, right? 2 natures of Christ joined in one person, one subject. So Christ, in that way we can say Christ is fully divine and also fully human, but all of his actions, everything that Christ does, is attributed to his person. So an analogy that I've heard is, if you take us, for example, normal human beings, what happens when we die? You say, Colin will die someday. What happens? Really, we're speaking to our lower bodily nature. Like, our body is buried, but our souls, as being body-soul composite, it perseveres in life, and it either goes to heaven, hell, or purgatory. So therefore, we speak of the souls in purgatory, right? We don't speak of the
too.
Yeah, right.
Our soul is immortal.
So that's a really helpful analogy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything to add on that, but I have something else to add to close. But
go ahead. I see. I told you he was smart.
Well, I'm trying. No, I'm a little more proximate to my theology education, I guess. But the other thing is, so that's step 1, is the hypostatic union. 2 natures of Christ, but 1 person. So anything that springs from any of those natures can be attributed to that person, right? Natures aren't the doers of actions, they're the sources of actions. Just like, so in that way we can say, God was hungry, right? Because Christ is God. John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word is with God, and the Word was God. It's a fundamental tenet of our faith that Jesus was God. So here's the next point, and here's the normal rebuttal that the atheist or the critique of Christianity will come back with. It's this, and this is where we get really complex here. It's, how can we call Christ a divine person, and Jesus is not a human person, right? Mm-hmm. So that sounds really complex, right there. But the problem there is that that's a very precise metaphysical statement, and not a lot of people have the philosophical pedigree and background to navigate and make the distinctions they need to make sense of that. But that is a dogma of the Catholic Church right there, is that Jesus is a divine person. He's not a human person. He has a human nature, and he's fully human, but he's not a human person. So the next step would be addressing that. And I could get really complex into Boethius's definition of personhood, that you have to differentiate person from substance, from nature, because Boethius, along with all of philosophy, agrees that a person is an individual substance of a rational nature. So persons aren't just human beings, but angels are persons, and of course God is persons, right? Mm-hmm. So Jesus, as God, the second person of the Blessed Trinity, is inseparably forever united. His personhood is united to his divinity, and that does not change with the incarnation, right? So instead of the second person being changed into a man, that's false, that's heretical. He assumes a human nature, an additional human nature, such that his identity's personhood is still intimately wrapped up in the divine, because God cannot change. He's immutable, one of the divine attributes. So we can't say that the second person of the Blessed Trinity became two persons. He's still one divine person, but has assumed, entered into the fullness of humanity, a human nature. So if you think about it that way, I think it can be helpful. A lot of that's breaking free from how we traditionally think about persons and natures being just an equivalent, So,
Boom.
person is the who, the nature is the what.
All right.
So I don't know if that helped at all.
I think it did.